All right. Well, for more on what the leadership change in Iran could actually mean for Iran, especially following those comments from Marco Rubio, we are joined by Behnam Taleblu. He's a senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. So, Behnam, first of all, I want to just talk about what we know about Mojtaba Khamenei, how he rose to this position, considering he's never actually held formal elected office in Iran, and what this is going to mean both short-term and long-term.
Well, it's a pleasure to be with you. In essence, your question contained the answer within it. It's precisely because he wasn't a public political figure, he did not stand for public office in the Islamic Republic, that the institutionalization of Khamenei's power was coterminous with the institutionalization of his family's power. Mojtaba was believed to function as something of a de facto chief of staff for the supreme leader. And in fact, the supreme leader's office was not just the office of a regular Shiite Ayatollah like you might find in Qom or in Najaf or Mashhad or any other major Shia city. It is a major sprawling security and intelligence complex that really runs the country. And to that effect, Mojtaba became known more and more to protesting Iranian masses, given his preference for hardline politics and perhaps most importantly, his alleged involvement in the famous 2009 Green Movement and the crackdown against that movement, particularly via the besieged paramilitary. Also, that the U.S. Treasury Department sanctioned him, adding more insight into the public domain about this individual who has barely spoken, but he's always seen at hardline rallies and regime commemorations. But in essence, the mystery that he has cultivated is intentional. But I think there is no mystery as to the direction this guy is going to be taking Iran in. This is the Middle East. Things can get from bad to worse, like father, like son.
All right. I want to talk about how Iranians are actually responding to the decision to name Mojtaba as the new supreme leader of Iran. Obviously, we're still seeing a large internet blackout across the country. But what do we know from the videos that have been released, that have been circulating on social media?
Well, largely, Iranians have been continuing to chant death to Mojtaba, since 2009, again, since that crackdown on the Green Movement, since protests were, again, violently repressed by the besieged paramilitary. There have been slogans occasionally in anti-regime uprisings against Mojtaba. Now that he's supreme leader, those slogans are really cascading. But ultimately, Iranians know that there's a small minority of people who support this regime, quite small. You're seeing the split screen there on the television right now. But that this is more proof that they cannot work by, with, and through any element of this system. And their goal has to be and continues to be to try to work to overturn it. And in that, they're looking abroad to Israel and America for assistance. So there's an open debate in the Iranian community, not just in the diaspora, but inside the country, as to how long the supreme leadership of Mojtaba might be, given Israel and America's targeting of the regime's political and military elites.
All right. Well, that's a final point that I want to talk to you about. We've kind of seen, you could say, wish-washy rhetoric from U.S. President Donald Trump. On one hand, he said that he, defends the protesters. When he was threatening strikes against Iran, it was in the name of those who had been slaughtered as well. And now we're hearing him say that he wants to be involved in the choice of the next leadership of the country. But it almost appears in the use of the term supreme leader, in choosing the next supreme leader, he could be open to perhaps the continuity of the Islamic regime if that leader is somebody that he deems fit.
Well, if the Islamic Republic survives this, and if there's a continuity of this regime, as the deep state in that country is trying to signal with the appointment of yet another Khamenei to the country's most important position, that national security challenge for the United States of America is simply not going to be going away. You can't have such a chasm between state and society in one of these really important countries like Iran, and one of these critical parts of the world like the Middle East and like the Persian Gulf. So in essence, if the president thinks that allowing the Islamic Republic to limp along is going to be, a major source of stability for the regime, I think that would be analytically dubious. Instead, I think the only way out now is through. The only way that the president can stabilize the region is to push past the Islamic Republic and all of these constellation of political figures in its entirety. And that means being done with the Khamenei family.
Right. Well, Behnam, I'd like to thank you so much for joining us.